All right, good afternoon, everyone. I know I'm not scheduled to be live tonight, but I decided because I was a little bored and didn't have anything else going on. And I thought I'd come and hang out with some of you guys here tonight on Amazon. So this is the pre-show. Let's get ready for it. All right, guys. So tonight what we're going to do is a little bit of retouching. So if you guys are interested in photography, retouching, photography when it comes to lighting, cameras, lenses, anything that's in the industry that you would think of, that you may have some questions about, feel free to ask those questions. I'll do my best to answer them. I am monitoring the chat here a little bit, but tonight we're just going to focus on editing a couple of photos, possibly, depending on how much time we have. So at the same time, I do have all of the gear that you guys see listed in the carousel at hand's reach. So if you have any questions about anything that's in the carousel, feel free to ask me about it. I'll be more than happy to demonstrate it or show it to you or talk about it or give you my insight on using it, in a professional environment. So you guys just hang in there. We'll be live in about 30 so seconds. We are almost live, guys. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. We're going to get right to it. All right, guys. So what you see here is an image that I've used this image a number of times in my portfolio, and it's a raw image that I've done some retouching on. But what we're going to do here is go in and I'm going to show you guys exactly how I got to the final stage. And let me turn my tablet on. Cool, we are connected. All right, let's make sure. Zoom in here a little bit. And see, the lighting is not horrible on this image. It could just use a little bit of exposure adjustment, I think. So I'm just gonna bring the exposure up just a little bit where we start to get a little bit of pop in the highlights. We don't wanna go too far with it. I think that looks pretty good. So this is a 36 megapixel image, 300 DPI. So it's a pretty high resolution image. As you can see here, all the details you can see in the face, for the most part, the hair, the nails, so on and so on. So usually to get an image like this ready for delivery, the first thing I would do is, like I said before, I go in and I take a look at my lighting and see exactly where my shadows are falling, my highlights. So I'm gonna adjust the whites just a little bit here. It's about there. And I'm gonna adjust my black point. Okay, so we're good. So let's go ahead and open this image. So let's look at, excuse me, guys. Let's get an idea of exactly what we need to retouch here. So if we zoom in here on her eye, we can see a few things. We can see that she was wearing some fake eyelashes. So I needed to go in and retouch that, to correct that. And let's see if we can still see it on the other one. No, it's not so visible on the other one. And the hair, it's fine. There's a few little flyaway hairs like around the ears and things like that. We could always touch those up. But usually, excuse me, I need some water. Usually the things that I focus on the most here is going to be the skin texture and if there's any, major imperfections in the skin. So that's what we're going to focus on right now. So the simplest way to start off is to duplicate this layer. So you want to start off with, obviously when you first bring it into Photoshop, the layer that you have is just the original image, which is your background layer. And you don't want to ever edit on your background layer. So you want to at least have one, safety layer. So on a Mac, that's Command J. I think it's Control J on a PC if you're in Photoshop. And so what that has done is just duplicated this layer. So now we have two versions of the same exact layer. So I'm just going to zoom in here a little bit, and I'm looking for, small imperfections. If this is for, say, one of my, as an example, if this is for one of my makeup clients or someone, that I'm doing some editorial work for, then I'm going to be very, very precise when it comes to retouching these type of images. That's why I mentioned that I could see here the issue with the artificial eyelashes there. So, but we'll get to that if we have time. So let's go ahead and zoom out. And when you're starting off with this, when you're doing your retouching, you don't need to be macroly close. You don't have to be super zoomed in on your images. You don't have to be like, pixel level, when you're zooming in on your images. You just want to be close enough that you can see what's going on and where the little imperfections are that you want to start correcting. So usually I start off with the forehead, and then I just kind of work from there. So I'll zoom in on the forehead, and I start looking for, the imperfections that I want to take out. And I see like a couple of little flyaway hairs and things like that. So the simplest tool, to get the job done is to use the spot healing brush. And I'm just going to bring the brush size down small, about the size of one of those hairs, maybe a little bit larger. And I want it to be a, relatively hard brush. So I can just go in here and I can just touch these hairs up and just blend them in with the skin tone for the most part. And all of the little flyaways, you don't really necessarily need to get rid of all of them, just the ones that are going to be, a distraction. So, usually the first thing I think about is, is this image going to be on the web? Is this image going to be on someone's website? Where's this image going to be seen? Now, if it's going to be, standard social media, you can probably get away with not being so detailed when it comes to the retouching. But if this is something that's going to be printed or it's going to be used in a major campaign, you want to take your time and go in and really, look at all of the little imperfections that may have, gotten past the makeup artist. And usually when we're shooting stuff like this, there's definitely a makeup artist. There's usually a manager or a director on site. A lot of times, it'll also be the company liaison, whoever that may be. And they know exactly what they want these images to look like. And then, we've already discussed it. We've already talked about, exactly what the campaign is and how they want the images to be presented. So some of the things that I may be touching up here, I'm just doing it just for me. Some of these things aren't really necessary, but I do it anyway. So like right here around her, where the color is in her hair, there's a few little areas that you may want to get. And sometimes that'll just happen, when models are moving around and, things are being shuffled around or what have you. You'll get these little, pieces of makeup that'll just wind up, everywhere, especially when they're using stuff like glitter and things like that. You'll get home and you'll find glitter on yourself and go, how did I get glitter? But yeah, guys, you know what I'm talking about. So let's touch these up. And even these little small things, you can get these right now. I usually, if I see them, I go ahead and take them out. But a lot of times when you're doing your frequency separation, you'll be able to catch a lot of these because you'll be able to blend those colors together relatively well. But, just for my own sake, I usually go in and I'll at least go over the entire image at least once. So like here, there's some little flyaway hairs around her ear. So I'd go ahead and take these out just because I can. So the faster you can clean this up. And if any of you are curious, yes, I am using a Wacom tablet, but any tablet can, for the most part, do basically the same thing. Most modern tablets are going to have about the same, 8,000, pen pressure or sensitivity and stuff like that. So you're going to be good when it comes to that. I chose the Wacom because, from all the reviews and everyone that I knew in the industry, especially, a lot of retouchers, that's the direction that they went. So I figured, someone who's doing this on a daily basis, pretty much has a really good insight into, what's going to be a good tablet or not. So I just kind of followed the leader. So she's got just a few little things, and most of it, I tell you guys, if this was, on a billboard, and a lot of these images have, that we've done, wind up on, like really big billboards and stuff like that, or big, signage. Most people probably would never notice this stuff, but your directors will. Your makeup artists, sometimes they'll notice it, after the fact, but usually it's going to be, people in the marketing team or something like that. They may notice something. But usually what we do there is, once we retouch one of these images, if we're doing the retouching in studio, we'll show them a version of it. And if they see something that they want, further retouched, obviously we'll do that as well. But in some cases, a lot of cases, where I'm doing some photography, I don't do the retouching. The retouching is, passed on to someone else, that the management team has designated to be their, retouchers. So that looks pretty good. There's one little pimple there under her lip. Okay, I think we're good. All right, so like I said, if you look at this image realistically, what you're seeing now, most people would be happy with this image as they see it, because we've gone in and we removed the majority of the little small imperfections. But, what you have to think about is, who, again, is this image for? If it's for a makeup company or something like that, then every little small imperfection matters. So like here, like I said, with the eyelash, I'm going to see if we can fix it the easy way. And that's just going to be trying to just clone out where you can see the line. I'm just going to see if I can get that to match. And then what I'll do later is I'll come in and do a little bit of dodging and burning, where I can burn this down a little bit more, so it's definitely hidden and you won't be able to see it. You got to think about how close we're zoomed in. We're like really, really zoomed in on this image. So, okay, so that's good. So at this point, usually I will go ahead and just flatten this image. And then I would either run one of my own actions that I've created, or, actions that I've gotten from other photographers, that are also very good at creating this type of content. But it just depends on what it is you're working on. So I have, a 16-bit action and 8-bit action that I usually use on a regular basis. So this is a 16-bit image. So I'm just going to go ahead and run my little 16-bit action. And what we're going to do here in this first step, we're going to blur out the color layer of her skin. So I'm going to set that at about 12. That should get it pretty blurry where you don't see, and what you're trying to do is blur out all of the, texture and everything from this specific layer. So now we can turn off our black and white helper layer if we want to, just so we can see things a little bit better. And let's zoom in. Now, when you're choosing a lens, for this type of photography, you have options. You can go with, my favorite, which is the 135. I love to shoot with that lens. That's one of my favorite lenses to shoot with. especially for, like headshots and, things like this. But also, another excellent lens, for this type of photography is the 85 millimeter, because that's going to give you that really good compression where you don't distort the facial features or anything like that. So everything looks, really good. All right, so I'm going to turn off our high layer, which is our texture layer. So you should see everything kind of go a little blurry. And then I'm also going to turn off this third layer here that I have here for, matching color tones. So at this point, what I'm going to do is come down to my color layer, and then I'm going to come over here to my brushes, and I'm going to choose the mixer brush. And I'm going to set that at 2%. I'm going to bring the load down to, I want this to build up. So we're going to bring the load down to say 30. And we're going to do the same thing with the mix. We're going to bring it down to 30. Now, a lot of times I force myself to use the tablet to do things like this that would be much easier if I just typed in the number. But it teaches you that hand and eye coordination that you'll need, especially as you go further into your editing career. Okay, we got that. That's close enough. And also you want to make sure that you do not have sample all layers selected. So now we have our mixer brush. So at this point we can just zoom in a little bit, not too much, just to get a little bit closer. That's way too close. So about there is good. And we're just going to start mixing the colors that we see in the skin to try and create some harmony. So we're going to go back to our mixer brush, and then we want to make sure this is a soft brush. So I'm going to make it a really soft brush, maybe about 20%, something like that. And then now I can just go in here and I can just start mixing these colors. And all I'm doing is trying to create some harmony in the skin. I don't know how well this will translate to, with the compression and everything here on Amazon, but you should be able to see, how these colors are being mixed together. Because what I'm really doing here is I'm mixing all of my highlights, I'm mixing my shadows, but I'm not mixing them together. So I'm only mixing the highlights with the highlights and the shadows with the shadows. And like here on the cheek, where there's usually going to be, some makeup, you want to mix that really well so it looks exactly how the makeup artist intended it. So what you really want to focus on is trying to follow the lines of the face, the shape of the face or the shape of the body, whatever part of the body you're working on, whether it's an arm or a leg or, whatever it is. And, in the beginning, when you start seeing this, it'll look a little weird to you. As you start to mix these colors, you will have to go over them a couple of times in some cases. That's why I set the load, the mix and the flow to a lower number, and also the wet, to a lower number. The reason why you want your wet to be a low number is because, think about the amount of paint that you may have like on a paintbrush. You don't want it to be sloppy. So, every time you move your brush, you're just really just throwing, liquid everywhere or throwing paint everywhere. You don't want that. So I'm going to bring my brush size a little bit smaller, just for this area here on her cheek. And then here on the bridge of her nose, I want to kind of, create some harmony there. Down the nose. Now be careful with this technique because it can change the shape of someone's face, and you want to avoid that as much as possible. And you can also easily change the colors of their face by blending the wrong colors together. So when you start to see that, you'll have to go back over that a couple of times to make sure you're matching those colors. But I'll also show you another way that I also paint the colors back in when I need to. Because sometimes this frequency separation can have a tendency to mix the colors a little bit too much. So it just depends on how comfortable you are with it. So I'm just mixing her neck here. And these techniques, guys, will work on almost anything. If you were doing food photography, you could literally use these same type of techniques on food photography, or I won't say you can use it like on real estate or something like that, but anything that has texture and color, and you want the colors to have a harmony, frequency separation works great for that, when it comes to creating that type of harmony in the images. So like here on her hands, I'm trying to mix the highlights and the shadows independent of each other, because I don't want her hands to be flat and be without any type of dimension or shape. So, but I do want the skin tone to be consistent. So if you do this on one part of the body, for the most part, you need to do it on the entire body, any part of the body that's visible, like here on her shoulder. And usually, depending on your lighting, the direction of the light is what you're trying to follow. So if you know that there's a highlight on one side, you want to, follow that highlight. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. What? Sorry. Thank you for following. Proax, am I pronouncing that right? If I am, please, let me know, because I'm horrible at pronouncing names. Okay, so now we have, I think for the most part, the color looks good. So if we turn our texture layer back on, you can see, now the texture is back on. And I'm gonna zoom out a little bit so you guys can kind of see what's going on. So if I turn off, all the layers, you'll see the before, and that's the after. That's before, and that's after. So like here on her cheek, it's a little bit too dramatic. So what I want to do now is I want to bring some color back into her cheek, which is the natural color. So that's what this middle layer is for. So I'm gonna turn that layer on, and I'm gonna zoom in here a little bit. And what I want to do is I want to select that color that I want to paint with. Let's get that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly paint over that area just to bring those colors back to where they need to be. So I'm just going to bring my brush up to a larger size. Let's see, what is my opacity set at? Okay, so I want my flow to be maybe somewhere around in the 30s. I can always adjust it. And then I'm going to reduce the brush size here a little bit. So now what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of painting back in. See, like that's way too heavy. You can see that it's too heavy. So what you can do there is you can go in and adjust your opacity to get that about right where you want it. And now as you go in and you start to paint a little bit more, you can just kind of even that out. Because all you're trying to do is just mix those colors so that they look more consistent. Now I don't think that this should have a point to her cheeks. So I'm just going to kind of round that off a little bit. And I'm going to add a little bit here in the shadows, just to soften it up just a little bit. Because we're going to do a lot more with this image, but I'm just showing you guys some really simple techniques you can do by just painting the colors back in. And you can sample as you go. Okay, so let's zoom out here. That still looks like a little bit too much to me, so I'm just going to try. Let me resample here. Yeah, that's still too much. So let me grab this patch tool. I'm just going to select that area and just kind of move it about there. Yeah, that'll work. Because what I have planned for this, this really won't matter too much. So if we go back to the black and white, we can see where the colored variations are here in the cheek. So that's one of the things that we definitely want to fix. So we have a number of options that we can do. So one would be to just create a stamp layer. So Option Command C. We're going to create a stamp layer. We're going to turn off our black and white. And then go back to our stamp layer so we can see what we got there. Okay. So I'm going to redo that. Okay. So now we have our stamp layer. So now I can go in with my patch tool and I can kind of just move this exactly where I want it and just, you know, blend these colors perfectly. And like I said, you know, here we're still going to do some dodging and burning, but I don't want to, you know, paint too much of her skin away, the texture itself. And that's what you really got to be careful of when you're doing this type of retouching, is that you're losing, you know, crucial texture in the skin. Now, a lot of images that you guys may see, you know, on social media and stuff like that, is just so blurred out that it's just almost to a point that it doesn't even look like a real person anymore. I'm not a big fan of that. I mean, I see it a lot, but that's not how I usually approach it. So, okay, let's see where we're at. So let's zoom in here a little bit. Yeah, I'm still not really happy with that. So let's just grab that color again. And then we're going to just try to lightly, let's bring our opacity way down. Just lightly touch up. There we go. Okay, so I did want to touch up her eyelids, eyelashes and stuff like that. And we're also gonna change her lipstick a little bit. So another way that you can approach this is to, you can come in here, excuse me, and see what a lot of guys will do is, like I said, they will blur this too much, but I'll show you what it looks like. So if you grab your lasso tool here, you could go in and say, pick an area. Let's say right here, this area. And we're just gonna just select that area. And then you can come up here to filters, blur, Gaussian blur. And then you can see, you know, real time what it's going to be doing there. So 12 is way too much. So I'm gonna bring that down to, you know, maybe about 2-3 pixels, something like that, just to soften the skin a little bit. That's all we're trying to do here. So I'm gonna come and pick another area. I'm gonna do basically the same thing. I'm just gonna right click. And you can start to see how it's softening the skin. And you don't have to apply this everywhere. You know, it's only where you have problem areas that you think may be very obvious, that there needs to be some, you know, further retouching or something like that. So I'm happy with this. So let's go to our dodge and burn. So we're going to run a dodge and burn action. And you can add, like what you saw me do before with the black and white layer, just so you can see where all the colors are. So if you want to do that, let's zoom out first. So if you want that helper layer, you can just come down here to your effects and choose black and white. And of course I put it in the wrong place, so I'm going to move it all the way to the top of the stack. And now we have black and white. And then you also have in your properties the colors. So red and yellow make up skin tone. So if you want to really see where the highlights are and where the shadows are, you can just really start to push the reds and then balance it out a little bit with the yellow. So you see exactly where your highlights are and where your shadows are. So it tells you, for the most part, where you want to dodge and where you want to burn. So just with that tool, whether it's on or off, you can see the area. So your dodge is going to be your lighter areas. You're just going to add a little bit of light there, and your burn is going to darken the areas that are already dark. So if we start off with our burn, and we're just going to go over here and just grab a regular brush. And let's look at the size of our brush and make it a little bit bigger. So if I want to go in this little area right here, because I know the cheek, well, I want to burn that in just a little bit around the neck. And so on. You're just creating dimension. That's the objective of this. And usually I'll do a little bit of burning over the makeup, things like that, the eyelashes, the eyebrows. I'll go over those just to give them a little bit more shape. And then when I go to my dodge, I'm looking at those highlights. So I can see like here on her, right here in the T-zone, right above her cheek, I'm just adding a little bit of light in that area. Here on the chin, then her collarbone, the collarbone here. And I could bring a little light like on her fingers, just a touch. Okay, so if we turn off that black and white layer, and then if we turn off the dodge and burn, you can see how I use the dodge and burn to kind of shape her face a little bit. So we can go back to the dodge. And usually when you're doing dodging and burning, you usually spend a lot of time, macro dodging and burning is where you really go in where you're almost looking at a pore level where you're going in and you're, either lightening or darkening a pore, but that's not what I'm doing with an image like this. For an image like this, my objective is to create something that looks good, that's going to print well, and the client's going to be happy with it. And all the colors are going to pop, that kind of thing. So we really don't need this black and white layer anymore. So we can just, drag this down and get rid of it. So we're happy with that for the most part when it comes to our dodging and burning. So let's zoom in a little bit. That looks good. Now, the other thing is, even if you don't know how to do a lot of the things that you see me doing here in Photoshop, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, because of course it does, but you can learn a lot of these things going forward on your own. And then there's also a ton of plugins that you can use that can basically do the same thing. So for instance, if you were looking for a really cool fast plugin to get you pretty close, in the ballpark. I have a few of them that I've used in the past. Like I have Portraiture is one. It works really well when it comes to, for, basic skin retouching. And I'll show you guys a little bit how that works. So you just click on Portraiture as a plugin. You'd have to purchase it and then install it, and then it will run along with your Photoshop. But if we zoom in here on this image, and that's too much, let's zoom back out. And we're going to move her over so you can see her face a little bit. So here you can go in and you can select, certain areas of the skin. If you see this little mask area here on the left, as I mouse around, it's showing me which areas it's going to select. So if I zoom out a little bit, I want to get to the T-zone. So if I'm right about here, and that's where I choose it to calculate from, then you can see what it's doing to the skin, how further it's blurring the skin, right? So we're just gonna go ahead and click OK. I'm not gonna do anything further with it. I just want you to see the difference of what, one of these plugins can do. So let's zoom in. So that's after the plugin. That's before, after, and before. I think that's a little, too much, for my taste. But, another thing is that you can also lower the opacity, so you could always bring that down, or you could create a mask and just paint this in certain areas where you actually want it to be, present. So it depends on, exactly what it is you're trying to capture and what you're trying to edit in and out. Now that's, again, like I said, this is where, a tablet comes in really handy, because if, for instance, I didn't want this entire effect on the entire image, then I could just add a layer mask. And then, I could add a layer mask, and then I could invert that mask. Now all I need to do is, at that point is just paint in. Let me get back over here. Okay, so the only thing I would need to do at that point would be to just paint in the areas, that I would want that applied to. But, like I said, it just depends on, your workflow and how you wanted to go about doing it. So, another thing that I like to do, when I'm playing with these images, and I try to edit something every day. I don't care, what I'm working on. If I have some free time, I will edit an image just for fun. So I look at this image and I start to think about, different lighting, effects and things like that. And I'll go through and I'll look at my plugins and I'll look at different, things that I can create from this. And it also helps me think about the type of lighting that I may want to use in the future for a similar type shoot. If I want to use gels or if I want to use different type of modifiers, lighting modifiers and things like that. So as an example, we can go into another application that you guys are, you could, download and play with, just for fun. But a lot of photographers use this, for a huge part of their workflow. And this is Affinity. No, I'm sorry. It's not Affinity Photo. It's Luminar AI. And what this application allows you to do is to kind of use really basic presets, to just kind of push your photo to the next level. And then once you bring an image in, the AI component of this software, what it's supposed to do is it goes in and it looks at similar images or give you examples of images that are similar to the one that you're working with. So let's say if we go here to Essentials, there's 5 presets here. So we could go with Flawless. You have to give it a second or two. Okay, so that's like their Flawless effect. And this is the Rembrandt, Fashionista. I like this one. It's a little strong, but you can also hear, you can lower the opacity if you feel like it's just a little too much. But also, like Photoshop, it has a full editing suite where you can come in and you can actually edit, the structure, the color. You can do black and white. You can do so many different things built into this simple program. So if you picked one of the presets, and you'll see like a little dot next to whatever it is it's done. So like, for instance, you're under skin. So we could click here and we could click and select skin defect removal. So if we select that, what it's going to try to do is go in and remove any little imperfections in the skin. So, like pimples or anything like that, it's going to try its best to remove those. So, we can zoom in here a little bit and kind of see what it's done. You got to remember, I also did a lot of editing on this photo. So this is not a really good example. A perfect example would be if we didn't do anything, prior to this image, and then we were just, applying these effects or something like that. Also, it has, similar to Photoshop, it has some body manipulation algorithms where you can change the shape of someone's face, or you can change the shape of their body and things like that. We use that a lot in Photoshop, at least I do, when it comes to correcting things like, lens distortions on someone's face or something like that. So if the lens that I'm using, as an example, choosing the wrong lens can be detrimental to your final image. And what I mean by that, or choosing the wrong f-stop. So let's say, for instance, we're using, this 85 millimeter, right? And you're shooting at 1.8. 1.8 is going to give you a very, very shallow depth of field. So that means one eye is going to be in focus and the other eye is most likely not going to be in focus. That's why usually when you're shooting fashion, you're shooting f8, f10, something like that. So you are never in those low numbers, like, f.1.8 or 1.4. Rarely will you be in those numbers when you're shooting on a professional set, because you really want everything to be in focus. So when that does happen, sometimes it can distort the image as well. So it can make one part of the face look larger than the other, and then you have to go in and then further correct that. So usually what I do is I would go into Liquify, and Liquify will allow me to do, subtle pushes and tugs and things like that, to correct the image. So as soon as this image goes into Liquify, I'll show you what I mean. So let me first, I'm going to choose the push tool. I'm going to make my brush large, soft. So if you look at her jawline here, it looks fine to me. I don't see anything wrong with it. But let's say there was something wrong and I needed to correct it. So now I could take this tool. I'm just distorting it now just so you guys can see. But, now I can adjust her jawline. I can adjust her chin. I could adjust her shoulder here. I could bring that down a little bit if I needed to, if it was like, too high up or something like that. You see how her forehead looks like it has like a little indentation right there, right above her eyebrow? So we could fix that by just kind of rounding out her forehead a little bit, just to give it a little more natural look, right? Now, I'm not saying that you should do these things all the time, but if you need to, it's just one more tool that'll make it that much easier for you to correct when something isn't perfect or didn't get captured perfectly, when you were doing the actual shoot. So I'll show you the before. So that's after. So that would be before. That's a drastic, change. But for the most part, if anything, I would just correct that little area right here above the eyebrow. If anything, I wouldn't do any of the other stuff that I did as to demonstrate. But you guys kind of get the idea. So like I said, you can use these actions, plugins, all of them, to your heart's content when it comes to correcting stuff. I mean, there's a ton of different, plugins in Photoshop that can do some amazing stuff. Like some of these little action panels, and you can get these, like for, pennies on a dollar. And they basically are just actions that you click on that allow Photoshop to follow a set pattern of things that it will correct for you. So you have some that, let's say for makeup, as an example, you have plugins for fixing makeup, and all of the same things that you would normally see in a makeup artist's brush in her caboodle, you'll see all of those same things here. So if it was going to be smoky eye, or if I was going to do, eye whitening or something like that, all of those different plugin effects are here in this specific plugin panel. And then you have others, like the final thing that I usually concern myself with is, what is the final image going to look like? What do I want it to look like? And that's when you get to your color grading phase, where you're saying, okay, I want, the background color to be slightly this or slightly that. And, a really cool plugin, for you guys to check out is this one here, which is Infinity Color. And I'm just going to give you a demonstration of what it can do. You can just click on Create, and it'll just randomly create different looks. And then you can then go in and further adjust those looks. If you see something you like, you go, okay, I like that. That's a good starting point. And then you can then go in and decide, what parts of it you want to keep, or what parts of it you want to enhance, further enhance, or something like that. You're only, limited by your imagination. So you see how drastic that went from the green tone that we originally started with, to something that's more bronzy, more red, fiery. And then you can still add more to this. So it really depends on, again, like I said, what the image is going to be used for. For a lot of you guys out there that are content creators that are just starting out, and you're creating your first lives, or you're posting, some content on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or wherever it's going to be, and you want to be able to create this type of content, and you want to be able to take photos of yourself or maybe a model that you're working with, only thing I'm trying to do here is show you some, techniques that I use for the most part on a daily basis, to try to take these things to the next level. Now, when you pick your outfits, take your background into consideration. You don't need to necessarily always have, the big giant studio. I mean, I've done some things in nothing more than a small bedroom size environment, and the background was just slightly larger than the model's head. And, simple lighting setups, where I just have a simple lighting setup around the model that I could utilize in order to, acquire the image, because I got an idea of what I want this image to look like. So in post, I know, the direction I'm going to be, going in when it comes to, finishing off the image or something like that. But the other thing that you want to keep focus on is if you're shooting for yourself or for someone else, spend a little time looking at your images and, look at the hair, look at the makeup, look for, things that you will have to fix in the, in post. A lot of times you can find these things during the shoot, and you can, have them adjusted by the makeup artist or something like that. Maybe the earring is facing in the wrong direction or something like that, or they're wearing a necklace and the necklace is, not centered on their body or something, that, will be a distraction when it comes time to edit the image. So take the time, look at those type of things, and make sure what you're capturing is going to be something that's going to be, easy for your workflow. So you're not going to add another 10 or 15 hours to editing these photos on top of doing the photo shoot. You know what I'm saying? So, it is what it is. But, I wanted to show you guys this image because I think this was a good one to kind of give you an idea when you're talking about color, harmony, because there's a lot of green and there's brown and then skin tone and stuff like that. Plus, the simple way that I can do some of the retouching, just going in and touching up the skin, removing the imperfections, getting rid of like pimples and things like that. So let me see. I'll save that for another live. Because, maybe in the next live, I'll show you something similar to this, doing something that would be full body. Now, you can also do some really creative things with this. Like, say, for instance, this is a very simple background behind her, but you don't have to be limited to that. A lot of times what I'll do is I will go in and create a completely separate, I'll change the background, or I will create some texture for the background, just to make it look a little bit better. Let's see, where did I put all of my textures? And of course, because I want one. You know how when you want to show someone something, you can never find it? Yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I don't remember, I think it's on one of my drives. And I don't have it plugged into this laptop. Let me see if I can find, you know what? That's okay. Let's just go over and I'm going to download a texture. So give me a second. So even if you don't have these textures yourself, you can download these from a number of different sites and, pick something that you like. So I'm just going to go with texture. Now I want something kind of a brick effect or something stone-like. So let me see what I'm finding here. Oh, I do like this fire. Okay, so let's go with that. So I'm going to download this. I'll show you guys this. I know you can't see it. So I'm going to download that. Give it a second to download. And then see where it went. Actually, I could have probably used that one. But okay, so now I know where it's at. Okay, so let's flatten this image real quick. Then we're going to go to that texture, which is this one. And let's just open it. Okay. And let's zoom out a little bit. So as you see here, you can just, kind of stretch this out however you want it. Just kind of match it up. And then okay, so now I don't want it all over her face and everything like that, so I'm going to remove that. So I'm just going to choose black, grab my brush, and we're going to make this brush larger, and we want it to be hard. So now we should be able to, oops. Now we'll be able to just go in here and just start painting away. Let's bring our flow up to 100 and our opacity up to 100. And now we can go in and paint away all the areas where we don't want that effect. like on her body, for instance. We're just going to paint all that out. We just want it on that background. There we go. So you guys get the idea. So you could easily go in, like I'm showing you here, and you could create a whole new look to your image, you know, by just adding a simple background or changing a background, you know, based on something that you already have. And all this is just an additional layer. So if I turn this layer off, that's what it looks like without it, and that's what it looks like with it. And then even that, I can still adjust the opacity of that, so I can still bring that down even further, you know, to kind of blend it in. Or I could change the blend mode, you know, for instance, you know, like right now that's set at soft light. So if I wanted to make it more aggressive, I could bring it up to overlay, or I could do a multiply where it's much darker, you know, so you could use all of your different blending modes to determine exactly how you want it to look. So, but, you know, in future lives, we'll spend more time looking at, you know, blending modes, different things that we can do here in Photoshop, you know, when it comes to just manipulating these images. But, you know, especially, you know, for you ladies who are doing a lot of makeup and stuff like that, you know, this is something that maybe will definitely come in handy. Or if you have somebody that you guys may be working with, model or something like that, that you want to be able to create these type of, you know, flawless looking images. So, all right, guys, if you're not already following, please do so, you know, so that way you guys will be notified each time I go live. I will be live tomorrow, noon. And I will be doing some retouching, and we'll be here talking about, you know, camera gear and lenses and, you know, my favorite lenses, as well as, you know, camera bodies. You know, what my future is, some of my wish list stuff, you know, for cameras that I think I'm going to invest in, you know, for the coming year. I'm really happy with this new laptop, this MacBook Air M1. I'm very happy with it. This thing is like 10 times faster than the MacBook Pro that I had before it. So I don't really see a necessity, you know, for quite some time to upgrade to another laptop. But, you know, who knows? You never know. But, you know, camera wise, you know, you think about it realistically, if you find a really good camera body that you guys are happy with, and you find a system that works for you, you could literally stay with that system for years on end and still shoot with the same lenses. Camera bodies come and go, but lenses stay forever. So, you know, if you're going to invest in something, invest in your glass, because having a really high quality lens is far more important in a lot of situations than it is, you know, having a specific camera body. All right, guys, I'm going to bring this live to an end, but I will be live, like I said, tomorrow at noon. So I look forward to talking to you guys and hanging out with you a little bit, you know, drink some coffee and tell some jokes and edit some photos. You know how we do it. All right, until then, stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask, take care of your loved ones, and get out there and create something amazing. I will catch you guys in the next live. Peace. I'm out.